Hey, do you think CPUs are ever going to be good again?
Look, a lot of CPUs are just fine. It's just a relatively small number of affected CPUs that is causing heartache on the Intel side. And the AMD side, they didn't actually say they found a problem. They said they found some CPUs that didn't go through the full spectrum of tests.
Didn't they say it doesn't meet their quality bar?
The quality bar is that they weren't fully tested according to Verge.com. Sorry, TheVerge.com. Yeah. So what we are alluding to is that there were two statements this week from two different CPU manufacturers. Both Intel and AMD released statements. First off, AMD delayed the 9000 series Zen 5 Ryzen CPUs by 2 weeks and 3 weeks respectively. I think the single die chips got delayed 2 weeks from it was supposed to be a June 31st launch, and now they're going to be
July 31st.
Sorry, July 31st to June 15th, I think, or June 14th, I think. August 14th, whatever.
It's a bit concerning that these things were boxed and packaged and shipped into retail and then recalled back to the manufacturer. Like, how does this happen?
Well, okay, so it's really complicated making hardware, Brad. Okay,
sure.
No, I had the same question. Like that's how do you have a product that skips some QA step? I wonder if they discovered some late problem and added an additional QA step to it, and then they realized that they have to call these the first stuff that had already shipped into the channel back.
That's exactly my assumption. They may not be saying what the problem is, but they have to have found something.
Yeah, we talked about this over on the PC World channel. Gordon and Adam and I sat down as the embargo lifted and kind of talked through it. The TLDR is that there's no architecture problem. There's not even probably a microcode problem for a two-ish week delay. It is almost certainly some like manufacturing, assembly, or testing problem, and then they confirm that later on in the comment to The Verge. So it's really not a big deal.
Yeah. I wonder if they do have to pull some stock though. I wonder if some of those end up not going back out.
So they're pulling the basic gist is if you're not buying an early chip from a shifty reseller that's breaking embargo, there's no chance you're going to have anything because they're calling back all the affected chips, right?
Yeah, I just meant I wonder if it'll constrain supply if they have to pull a non-trivial number out of the channel.
It didn't sound like from the comment that Gordon got from them that they had it. You can watch Gordon, like I said, Gordon and Adam and I talked about it for a while on the PC World channel. It's in the live section, but it doesn't seem like it's going to constrain supply. Now on the Intel side, it's nice because they've finally addressed what I think are now extremely long running problems with their post 12th generation high end unlocked CPUs. And also maybe all of the other post 12th generation CPUs.
How in the world did it take this long? I feel like this has been in the news for the better part of a year at this point, and obviously it was happening before that.
Like people were taking it seriously for like 7 months now. Was the timeline basically? The OODLE announcement was about 7 months ago. The OODLE, the decompression library that first was like, hey, if you have problems, maybe consider clocking down your 13900K. I returned a CPU like March or April of last year. So it's been going for a long time. And so the TLDR is that they have come out and said, hey, we have some microcode problems that are resulting in the CPU getting too much voltage, and it's causing degradation on a small number of CPUs based on the testing of returns of 13th and 14th generation. They didn't say this. It was interesting because they didn't say 14900 and 13900Ks. They said 13th and 14th generation CPUs. So presumably this is also impacting other 13th and 14th generation CPUs, probably just lower end stuff at a lower level because the voltages involved aren't as damaging.
Yeah, like the 9 series is the one that's sucking all the juice down to try to run faster.
Yeah, but for what it's worth, at the PC World offices, I have torched a 14700K now.
Really?
And I also managed to blow up a 14900KF KS. So
you killed a 14700K? Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow. This sucks. All of this sucks.
I used an enthusiast motherboard that probably had more aggressive voltages than even the standard.
This is a wild one because in the AMD case last year, because let's not forget that AMD also had immolating CPUs about a year and change ago.
Yeah. But you know what the difference is? Instead of letting it sit for 7 months, They just said about a month in, hey, we figured out what the problem is. Here's some BIOS updates. We won't do this anymore. You may have to replace your board.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like in that case, people blamed the motherboard makers, more or less rightfully so. Like it seems like AMD had kind of an ill-defined spec, but it was the motherboard manufacturers that were pushing outside of whatever that vague nebulous spec was. In that case. In the Intel case, everybody just went and blamed the motherboard makers again because that's what happened last time. And now a year later, they have found like, oh no, it's our microcode that was the problem. Like, how did it take this long to discover that?
Well, they said one of the factors, I think. So the read that the reading between the lines, my assumption is that there are multiple things contributing to these failures, making it difficult to isolate single causes. So I think that the motherboard's overvolting out of the box, like the motherboard's never running in spec and in some cases spiking up above like 1.6 volts for these CPUs probably contributed to the degradation, which increased the signal, increased the noise, but not the signal for what the actual core problem was. And then other things happened, like Steve over at Gamers Nexus released a video last week before now for listeners that talked about oxidation on the 13900K, 14900K parts that he tested, which also contributed to crashes, right? So Intel had already acknowledged the oxidation thing, that like they said, hey, this is a warranty thing. We just fix it when it comes up. But this announcement seemed extremely carefully written to not get them to look. The lawyers did some work on this one.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing is at the end of the statement, they say, we'll make things right with our customers, right? So if you have an affected CPU, RMA it, and we'll send you a new one. But as of right now, the microcode update doesn't come out until August. So, you know, the recommended practice right now, if you have a 13900K, 14900K machine, especially, but also probably if you have a 14.7 or 13, maybe a 13.7, they haven't heard any 13.7 problems, is that you want to follow the Intel recommended voltages. And then there's also some stuff that Falcon Northwest posted on their Twitter about what voltages to run on the PL1, PL0 and stuff like that. And that should keep you safe until the new microcode comes out in middle of August.
Well, hey, the new Ryzens, the 9000 series, are a brand new architecture for them for the first time since Ryzens were a thing. And this fall, presumably this fall, I don't know if they've actually announced it yet, but Intel is finally moving to their chiplet tile design.
Yep.
And also going to some TSMC manufactured parts. Point is, a lot going on with new CPUs this year. So I'm sure everything will go perfectly smoothly.
Yeah. It's, you know, look, every time we've changed big parts of the CPU architectures, everything's been fine,
yeah,
right?
That's right. Everything just works right out of the box. Can we make CPUs boring again?
I mean, I think everybody involved would like that.
I sure would. At this point, I'm starting to question if they ever will. Like, is this just the new state of affairs? Like, are we in a weird disruption because like DDR5 happened and then COVID happened and like, you know, just a lot of things have been thrown into upheaval? Or are we just pushing sand so hard at this point that this is just the new state of affairs for CPUs? Because if it's the latter, I might want out.
Well, so I'm not an expert on this, but everybody is pointing out that all of these affected parts were manufactured during COVID times, right? Like designed and manufactured during COVID time.
Yep.
Which definitely probably has an impact. The other thing is moving from monolithic architectures and single die designs to these new more complicated designs has had a lot of like both expected hinkiness in terms of like the Windows task scheduler and stuff like that, and the thread scheduler and how it handles doling out work to like different, you know, CPU cores on the same die, on the same chip with different capabilities. But then there's also been unexpected stuff like, hey, maybe these things don't age as well as older monolithic CPUs. And I think we'll get there. I remain confident that we'll get there, right? Like these are tractable problems, but it's figuring stuff out as we go. And it doesn't feel good when you buy a $500 CPU and it lasts 9 months.
It sure doesn't. Make CPUs boring again.
I agree. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
Brad, it's my favorite time of month.
Oh,
It is the day into which we turn Q's into A's.
It's true. It's right into it.
Emails.
Yeah, emails. Emails?
Emails. If you would like to send a question in to us, you're more than welcome to. Everyone's welcome, whether you're a patron or not. The email address is techbot@content.down. If you are a patron or you can go into the Discord channel. There's a channel in there called Q's Seeking A's.
Questions seeking answers.
Questions seeking answers. I need to change that because I always think it's Q's Seeking A's.
Nope.
Anyway, questions seeking answers. You post your Q in there. It disappears to you, and then we'll turn it into an A. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get in the Patreon, you can by going to patreon.com/techpod. You get access to the Discord where you can post Qs that disappear as well. It's very fun.
Yep.
Brad, we have a healthy crop of questions this month.
A bevy.
Would you like to dig in and dig deep into the question pile and pull out the first one?
Yeah, right into it here this month. All business on this podcast.
Serious business.
Email from Toby.
Okay.
2 parts to this. I chanced upon this over the weekend and thought it was something you might appreciate. The logical escalation for what can we get Doom to run on? How about a non-Euclidean universe? This video actually came up in my YouTube recommendations like last week, and
Wow.
I'm really digressing from Toby's email. I apologize here, but my YouTube management is so bad. Frequently, if I see something I want to watch, I'll just let the first minute play so it makes it into my history, and then and then close it rather than like adding it to a playlist or some more sensible form of retention.
Oh, I just put it in the watch later.
Yeah, I frequently do that too, but sometimes I'm like, I'll just check this out and then maybe I'll come back, but I never do.
The real problem I have is that my kid and I watch YouTube videos together. So my stuff is like half really scary computer stuff and then half like chinchillas and guinea pigs and cat videos.
Oh man, I could
Japanese
not,
food.
I could not. Like I got to keep my algorithm clean, man.
Look, I would give anything. Look, if I ever run for office, one of my planks is going to be everything that's algorithm based recommendations has to have a clean start button. You need to let people nuke and pave because like I have so much Taylor Swift in my Apple Music. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway.
Okay. All right.
I hope you liked your answer, Toby. Thanks for writing in. We appreciate you.
Yes. Anyway, the title of this video is Non-Euclidean Doom. What happens to a game when pi is not 3.14159?
Well, and also, isn't Doom famously, didn't Carmack misremember pi for Doom?
I don't know if you misremembered it or not, but the Toby's follow up here. I think my favorite part of the whole thing is the fact that John Carmack stuck in pi to 10 decimal places from memory and then didn't check it. Pretty on brand behavior.
The last digit is wrong, as I recall. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's ridiculous.
I think that was in this video. It's why he mentions it here. Sorry. I watched this video when he sent this email, and it's a fabulous video.
Yeah, I need to get back to it.
We'll put it in the show notes, but it's really weird.
Okay. Toby's question. I have a load of small electronics that charge through USB-C, one of which is a Steam Deck. For reasons I can't justify, I never use that brick to charge the other lower power consumption devices like cell phone and headphones, etc., out of some irrational fear of it plowing too much juice through and burning them out. I know things just draw what they need, but I just can't shake the fear. Is this a paranoia either of you share? Is there any merit to it at all? I sure would love to travel with just one USB-C charger.
Look, kids in the USB age are never going to grow up with the fear of grabbing the wrong barrel connector and plugging it into your most treasured piece of electronics and then watching the magic smoke that makes the most treasured piece of electronics come out because you put too much juice in.
Center positive only.
Yeah. You can plug USB, assuming you're using reputable chargers like the one that comes with the Steam Deck or like an Anker, a real brand, non-AliExpress, non-generic, bought at a truck stop USB charger. Just plug it in. It'll be fine.
Probably. Yeah, that's probably the case. I will say this goes the other direction, though. But I will say when I've said this before, when I've shopped for a one USB-C charger to rule them all in the past, Anker or what have you, the Steam Deck is frequently the thing I see cited in the user reviews the most as being problematic. But again, not in the it's frying things sense, but in the it's not charging fast enough sense. Like the Steam Deck is apparently weird with some bricks that technically can supply the wattage that it needs about not pulling the full amount.
It's because it's a 45 watt, which I think is a weird number in the USB thing.
Yeah, I don't remember what the root cause was or if people even figured it out. But the upshot was you could not, on a lot of these bricks that again are like more than powerful enough to charge a Steam Deck, you couldn't you couldn't play the Steam Deck while charging and have it.
Oh, it gives the error message.
Well, yeah, you just couldn't get a net positive charge while you were playing. It would still drain the battery while you were playing it because it wasn't pulling enough to charge fast enough.
Yeah.
Which again is not dangerous. It's just annoying.
Yeah. In my experience, the Steam Deck works really well with laptop rated USB chargers, and not well at all with phone and like device rated USB chargers, just because 45 watts, like the Switch is, I think 39 or 29. I can't remember.
I want to say the Switch is also something weird and non-standard.
Well, so the Switch is a weird one in that the Switch brick will fall back to lower powers, but the Switch only charges at 1 wattage. It won't charge. It charges at basically the lowest of the low or its full speed and nothing in between. Because it's just some subset of the USB-C power delivery standard, whichever version it was when they released the Switch. I use my Steam Deck charger to charge almost everything. I charge my iPad, I charge my phone, I charge PlayStation controllers with it now. Like you're fine.
I've never actually seen a Steam Deck charger. I'm going to Google what that looks like right now.
It's a gray brick with a wire that comes out of it, and then there's a USB-C on the end of the wire.
Yeah, it sure is.
It looks so next to my chair in the living room, like hidden behind it in a place that normal people won't see unless they're crawling around behind the chair. There is a extension cord that runs under the carpet that has a Switch plug and a Steam Deck plug. And the Switch plug is literally just there because my Switch is never charged. So when I want to play Mario Kart or something, I have to plug it in.
Yeah. I've got a couple of recent MacBook USB-C chargers, which, the Apple chargers are also extremely high quality in terms of what devices they'll work with and how clean they are and so forth. But the problem there is just one port. Like that's the reason I actually look at the third party ones is I want something with like 2 USB-C and a USB-A minimum or something like that,
Wow.
Like
fancy.
It's just, I do enough having to work remotely these days that having one thing to plug in for everything is very appealing. But
so when I travel, if I'm going someplace for a while, I often will take like a Cube power strip. I've talked about them before. These Anker power strips, they're 45 watt or 30 watt power delivery, which is good for all the devices, but not, and it'll like do an overnight or slow charge on the Steam Deck or the iPad, but it won't charge it while you're using it, which is the kind of the gate that I think you're talking about.
Yeah. There are so many of these now. We shouldn't digress too much here, but I've tried a couple times to buy one of these, and between compatibility and heat issues in the user reviews, I just always kind of give up. But Amazon is just flooded with multi-port USB-C chargers these days.
Well, so this is why I only buy them from specific brands, because there's a lot of kind of sketchy business there.
Yeah, I'm with you. But even with even the Ankers, you will see enough people talking about issues that I always get scared away because I don't want to fry anything. But anyway.
So I have a couple of the Anker 2-port USB-C bricks that have one 40 watt and one lesser. And those have been really reliable. Those are what I take if I'm like overnighting someplace.
Yeah, I think it's the ones that get into really high output that start getting kind of sketchy, because there's you can get 200 watt ones now.
Oh yeah. It's not gonna be long before we plug in our cars with USB-C.
Yep.
But seriously, everybody should watch that non-Euclidean Doom video. It's really good.
All right, question from Hansel CJ. Will's mentioned multiple times that he never finds sites that don't work right on Firefox. I also use Firefox, but find myself opening another browser to get a website to work nearly weekly. I run a Pi-hole, which I believe you do too. I also have Privacy Badger and have the Firefox privacy settings turned up pretty high. That might be the difference in our experience. What additional privacy and security measures do you take?
So I use Firefox and a Pi-hole, correct? I also have uBlock Origin installed locally on the Firefox on Firefox. I don't have Firefox browser privacy set to strict, because that turns off all tracking content and fingerprinters, and it makes almost everything break in my experience. So my guess is that that's probably what's breaking everything. I find that it's the suspected fingerprinters, because that's what that causes a lot of JavaScript stuff to just break. And it turns out most websites use JavaScript to render things these days, and without that, things are bad. I don't know. I've never used Privacy Badger before. Have you, Brad?
I have not. I don't even know exactly what that is. I could guess though.
So Privacy Badger is a tool made by the EFF to block tracking cookies.
Oh, it's EFF?
EFF, yeah. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, I think.
Yep, that's them.
it also uses heuristics to block things that it thinks are trackers, which could be problematic. I feel like Firefox's tracking blocking is pretty good. So I feel like you're double dipping. I feel like something like Privacy Badger is much more important on Chrome or Edge probably than it is on Firefox, but I don't know for sure.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The more you know. I've had Firefox installed for like a month or two now, and I keep thinking about switching to it and then not.
You should switch. It's great.
Yeah.
Get that. Let's get up to 3% market share.
Who has the time?
Let's go Firefox.
There's like so many things I would like to do like that, or like reworking my home network, but it's also disruptive to my workflow that can't be disrupted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that is a real thing.
That is the perennial problem, is redoing things stops you from doing things. You know what I mean?
I cleaned up my Twitch streaming machine the other day.
Okay.
Feels real good.
Yeah. Yeah, it always does feel good to get stuff like that done. Okay. Question from Fortune. My new PC case has no RGB and no glass side panel. It's a black box with no lights. How much performance have I sacrificed by using a setup like this?
Wow, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Look, man, whatever.
So slow.
Whatever performance you may be giving up, you are more than making back in basic dignity.
Wow. Right now, my case looks like the Northern Lights because I like the Aurora Borealis.
My case, I can't even. It doesn't exist to me.
I showed somebody. We had somebody at the PC World office that was looking for a case for a project. I was like, oh, they wanted something that was easy to work on. I was like, you should look at this case right here. And we pulled the other one out, and they looked at it and they were like, good God, how many computers do you fit in that thing? Like one. It's a big case.
Which case was that?
Your Define.
It was mine.
It was one like yours.
But it's just a black monolith, though. I don't even know that it's there. It's invisible. It might as well be invisible.
Until you have to lift it up, and then you need a back surgery.
It's not that bad. Really not that bad. Actually, my Define R6, which is dramatically smaller than this, is heavier than this.
Yeah, I mean, that density is high.
Frankly, I think they were using sturdier metals in the older models.
Oh.
Because this one's got a lot more flex to it, which I don't necessarily love.
Doesn't your Define R6 also have a lot of hard drives in it?
Well, yeah, but even without that, that's just it's just a heavy case.
Okay.
I think they used to have more metal in these things.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing about the RGB, though, is just like having better skins makes you better at Counter-Strike or Valorant. Yeah. Having RGB definitely improves performance in video games.
I think the thing that I have a harder time with even than the RGB these days is the insistence of everyone to put their computers on their desks.
That's a Gen Z thing.
I know what it is. It's a Twitch thing. It's I want to show this thing off on my stream thing.
I don't have enough room behind me to put mine up is the only problem.
That's the thing. Like the desk is for doing stuff on. That's why the computer goes on the floor.
Like if you want to have it in your shot, you got to have the wires have got to be real long. It's like, I don't know, man. Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Brad.
Okay.
Do you remember when memory, like we were trying to figure out when memory got all RGB'd? Memory, RAM.
Yeah.
And like 2007, 2008, we were looking at old magazines. We couldn't find RGB memory. I remember it happening before I left Maximum PC in 2010.
Wait, really? I feel like that was I thought that was a pretty recent phenomenon.
No, I think we still were making fun of it though when I left Maximum PC. I don't think it was a thing that was desirable.
Or maybe what I'm thinking of is the fake RAM.
What do you mean the fake RAM?
Don't they make like fake RAM to pop? That can't be right. To populate your extra slots with. I thought I read that there was dummy RAM you could put in, but wouldn't that cause issues?
RAM bus, you used to have you used to have to put terminators in slots you weren't using. They were like little flat. They were this cards with just a little terminators on them.
Wait, hang
Resistors.
Hang on. I think this is in fact a thing. It absolutely is a thing.
Faux memory?
It is absolutely a thing. I am looking at it on Amazon right now. Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro Light Enhancement Kit, memory not included.
Well, hold on. But isn't that something you put on top of your existing memory?
Maybe. Okay, yes, I think you're right, actually. Maybe this is what I was thinking of. This appears to be an RGB add-on for your RAM.
Yeah, see, that looks sick, dude.
I'd swear, though, but I don't know how that would work electrically. Like, that seems like that would cause issues with memory detection to put, like, fake dummy DIMMs in.
No, you're right. It says 2 light enhancement modules to fill your empty DDR4 slots with the same RGB lighting effects of your existing Vengeance Pro memory modules.
There you go.
This seems like it would make your machine unstable.
This has gone too far. RGB has gone too far.
Hey, Brad, I've never seen this box before on Amazon, but it says frequently returned item. Check the product details and customer reviews to learn more about this item.
Wow, you don't say.
Weird. I don't feel good about this.
I've said this before. Okay, we both grew up in the South. I'm sure you're well acquainted with the phrase children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah, my parents didn't ascribe to that, though.
Oh, okay. I got that one. One from my dad on occasion, somewhat tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
It was not enforced, let's say. It was more of a warning, let's say. But
yeah, if my dad did that, it would be like when we were on a long car ride and we were demanding burgers.
Right.
Like we were on a road trip and we were like hungry. And he's like, we're going to drive 2 more hours before we stop and get food and gas.
Anyway, I need some computer RGB equivalent of that phrase. Computers should be used and not noticed.
Look, Brad, you need to just embrace the RGB. You need to let me come in there and just bling up your business. You get a glass side for that define. You could you could put some subtle lights in there.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be really nice, real classy.
Yep. Speaking of what we were just discussing, here's a relevant question from Warbird. How did you two facilitate your interest in tech and similar growing up in the South? Were you able to meet and share your hobbies with peers? Context, I was raised in South Alabama, and while we were neither particularly poor nor particularly rural for the region, having an interest in computers wasn't really viable from an accessibility or frequently a social standpoint.
Yeah, I had just broken through into the normies in high school at the time I discovered computers.
Oh.
And so if I wanted to go talk to the computer people, I had to be real slick about it and sneak off and like meet behind the field house on the football field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the one kid in my high school that lived in the basically the only message boards, not message boards, BBSs were in Bluntville, which was a long distance call for everybody who lived in Bristol, the town that I grew up in. So the one kid who lived in Bluntville and had a computer and a modem was basically a god amongst us, because he would come in with you would bring him blank floppy disks and he'd just bring you software. And so you'd meet him someplace seedy where normies wouldn't see you. And then you'd hide those floppy disks in your backpack real deep so that they wouldn't accidentally spill out and out you as a huge nerd.
Did you wear a trench coat?
No, this was before trench coats.
Imagining a trench coat lined with floppy disks on the inside.
Look, remember there was like a 2-year period when trench coats were okay. Yeah. He wore a trench. He was absolutely a trench coat guy. Okay. Lucas was a trench coat guy.
Sure.
Shout out to Lucas, by the way.
Yes. I was into games from the time I touched an Atari 2600 at somewhere around the age of 4. Like that's kind of all I cared about. But yeah, the games were accessible no matter where you lived, right? Like
kind of
like, we had department stores, right? It's like we were not that rural.
Like Hills had a pretty good Nintendo and Sega set up.
Yes, like the local Roses was the place we went to look at video games for the longest time.
Yeah, but we never had like TurboGrafx or 3DO or anything. Like we never had access to anything like that. We definitely didn't have access to PC games until after I had already left.
Yeah, I don't know how. I think we've talked about it before. I don't know how much the regional department store was a Southern phenomenon versus a national one.
I think like you mean like the Belks and the
Belks is national, right? Or I know JCPenney is national, but
JCPenney's national. Sears was national.
Belks might actually be regional. I'm thinking more of the standalone.
Oh, like the Hills and the Roses and all that.
Roses, Brindles. I'm trying to think of some others.
Service Merchandise. Did you have them?
No, we did not have that. But
Service Merchandise was great.
The reason I ask is those department stores, in my experience, were very good about having game consoles set up to play.
Yeah.
Like all the ones I can think of, like I just remember a lot of like demo kiosks, a little 13-inch TV and a console just sitting there that you could actually play a game on while your parents were shopping.
I think that was a nationwide marketing phenomenon because like you think about it, I have to imagine that they had demo, like Nintendo said, hey, here's the recommended way to display this. And then they would say, here's the game this month. And they'd send them a free. I wonder if they sent them retail games for that or if they were just some weird version of a game.
I would guess retail.
Yeah, because I guess those cartridges would be in out and we'd be able to download ROMs and stuff by now.
Yes, like those would be in the collecting scene if there were like department store versions of games.
Yeah, but like Hills always had demo stations set up and that was Like that was what I would do while mom was off buying shoes or clothes or something.
Right. Anyway, I didn't get into computers until late 93 was when we first got our first family computer. And by then, it was certainly computers and like online stuff were not ubiquitous at that point. But like, magazines were out there. Like we got a modem like a year after we got the computer, and then I got onto BBSs. So like, and I mean, I certainly didn't live in the biggest town ever, but like we weirdly had kind of a lot of BBSs for the size of the town. We had like 3 different local call BBSs.
Was there a college near you?
Kind of, but not in the local calling area.
Okay. So I think this is the difference between 93 and like 91, 92, which is when like we had an IBM XT that was kind of passed down from family members that I played. It was like, I think we had a Hercules monochrome display that I played like M1A1 Tank Platoon and stuff like that on. The that was the one that I would trade discs for when I was like a sophomore in high school, probably. The Wang that I got toward the end of high school, the Wang 386 that had Windows on it, was much more accessible. And that around then is when computer shows started. So we started having like a computer show would come to the local VA, and they would set up, like there would be people there with folding tables and trays full of software and Ziplocs. And it would be like a mixture of people who were resellers of software, who would buy software from other people and then resell it to people on the kind of computer show circuit, or also the people like the publishers would show up there sometimes. So it would be like, hey, here's a Ziploc with 3 RPGs in it from some publisher you probably have never heard of. Or maybe, hell, who knows? It could have been Activision at this point, for all I know. The other thing that happened around that time was, well, actually, and probably as a result of going to those computer stores, is I learned about the local screwdriver shops. So like Shields Electronics was a ham radio place, a ham radio and electronics supply store that also expanded into PCs in that early 90s time, when like working on AT PCs was a real business.
Yeah. I think I've said this before, but yes, the local computer store where you got your stuff was absolutely a vector for learning about things that were cool before the internet was a thing. Like I'm pretty sure I've said before, when we got our Pentium 75, the guy who sold it to us showed me how to overclock it before we took it out of the store.
Yep.
He showed me which jumper to change to make it into a Pentium 90 or 100.
So we bought the Wang at Walmart. I think it was on a New Year's sale. I did not get, the Walmart guy did not show me how to overclock the 386.
Man, he was just selling you short.
But like I learned about Boot Magazine from the screwdriver shop in Knoxville. Like my guy at the screwdriver shop there was like, hey, have you seen this new magazine? You should check it out. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And like that changed my life. So
I think the lesson is, if you're passionate enough about something, you will find ways to access it in some way or other, Yeah,
it's much easier now with the internet, though, it turns out.
Yeah, of course. I've had an idea as we've been discussing this.
Yes.
A bit tangential to this. Okay. There are a bunch of old hard drives at my parents' house.
Uh-huh.
Pulled from our first series of computers through the first 10 years of computers.
Yeah.
The hardware is long gone, which is one of the great regrets of my life. I could go back 6 or 7 years ago when my mom called me up and was just like, hey, can we just e-waste all these old computers that are down here in the basement? And I was like, yeah, just take the hard drives out of them first.
Yeah.
I would give anything if I could go back and smack myself in the face, because retro computing became a thing right after that. And I would give anything to be able to just go look at those things and be like, oh, that's how I overclocked that Pentium 75. Or like, oh, this is what kind of display adapter was in that 486 DLC,
Oh, yeah.
As a historical document. Sure. Anyway, whatever. I still have the hard drives. Here's the thought I have had. I've wanted to try to spin those things up for years to get whatever files are on them off.
And they're probably they're probably like 25, 50 meg hard drives, right?
I believe our first hard drive in that 486 was a 250 megabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
The biggest one is probably like 4 gigabytes or something from several years later. Anyway, I've always wanted to spin those things up and get the files off, which I'm kind of nervous about because they're so old and I don't know if they'll actually be able to spin up or not. Here's the thing I thought of, though. I was just going to get whatever documents and images and whatever is on there off, personal stuff. Could I boot those drives? Could I image that original 486 drive, which is a DOS 622 Windows 3.1 install, if I'm not mistaken? I don't think we ever tried to put Windows 95 on that. Could I image that drive and try to boot it with something like 86box?
I would think so.
There's got to be a way to do that, right? There's got to be a way to take an existing hard drive image and feed it into one of these PC emulators and just boot it, right?
Probably it would just boot with a VM.
Yeah.
Because you could set the VM to have ancient hardware, and You probably wouldn't have sound and stuff like that, but it would probably boot.
I guess there's got to be a way to do that. Like my only experience with creating VMs is that you start with install media, right? Like you take like the installer disk and install a fresh copy of an operating system. But,
but you can port an existing physical machine over. It's part of that's the part of the value prop for early VM use.
Oh my God, I have to do this.
I kind of wonder what the oldest OS you can boot on like a Ryzen 7800 is.
I don't know.
I wonder, could you do DOS 5.1?
I mean, a lot of it, 6.1 or 6.2 is probably, you probably want to do the most but DOS like would not be that driver dependent. Like that's really
but it has kernel stuff, right?
The hurdle really in a lot of cases would be the driver support, right? Like if you like motherboard chipset, display adapter, whatever, like the old operating system just doesn't know how to talk to the new hardware. But in terms of like BIOS and UEFI stuff, I'm actually not sure.
Well, there's secure boot problems probably, right?
Yeah, I don't know. My YouTube recommendations are all over the place. I was actually just watching a video the other day about modern CPUs that apparently all modern CPUs still when they are first supplied power, they still start up in 16-bit real mode.
Really?
Before they hand off to like UEFI and current. So I don't know how much backwards compatibility, but I think the newest computers don't have like traditional BIOS mode anymore, right?
I don't believe so, but I don't know.
I don't know how much like emulation can take place there, or like we are way out of our depth here. But I don't think you could boot a 30-year-old operating system on a current computer, but I could be wrong.
I'm going to add this to the list of ideas for PC World videos.
Yep, that sounds fun. If anybody has any info that they'd like to hit me with about turning an old hard drive image into a virtual machine, I would love to hear it though, because that sounds very fun. Anyway, that's probably enough prattle about that.
Yep.
Here is a question from Try. In a few months, I'm taking a long-haul flight for a holiday, which will be about 13 hours. Do you have any tips and or must-haves for flights this long?
Man, I just wear a mask and try not to breathe too much.
Yeah. I also mask on airplanes, although I was looking recently into what the air circulation is like on... Actually,
they're pretty good.
This is something I did not realize. I probably should have realized this before. I didn't realize that modern airplanes, or maybe all airplanes, collect air from outside and condense it.
Yeah.
And pipe it into the airplane.
Yeah.
Some kind of air exchanger situation.
Yeah. But I mean, look, the people the gate agents who have to open the door from the outside still trick new gate agents by telling them to get up right up close to the door when they open it. So they get hit with the fart smell.
Oh no.
As soon as they crack the seal.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it's condensing other things too. Is all I'm saying.
That's not great. That's not great. No. But the thing I was reading about though is the air density obviously is very low at that altitude.
Yeah,
but they're literally sort of just scooping what air there is in and pressurizing it or condensing it before.
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's only, I think, what is it? Airliners are pressurized to 8,000 feet or something. So it's not
it's pretty low. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, pretty high.
Oh, but it's pretty
compared to sea level.
Pretty low density is what I mean.
Yeah. Already that is.
Yeah.
I take a Steam Deck and an iPad and some good headphones, something you can wear that's comfortable for a long time.
Yeah, my recommendation is to update and charge every device you own and bring all of them with you and then not use 90% of them.
Yeah, that's always that's a classic move.
That's kind of what I end up doing.
I usually make sure I have a couple of books, and then I make sure I often, especially in the days of the AirPods, I'll take a pair of AirPods and I'll also take a pair of on-ear headphones because I have a hard time wearing AirPods for 2-3 hours is no problem, but 10 hours is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to answer the question seriously, noise canceling headphones are a must for me.
They are. It sounds dopey, but the noise canceling headphones are a significant life improvement when you're huge. They remove the noise of the airplane, which turns out is stressful.
Yes. It's very nice to not have to listen to that for 13 hours. I'd say look up the airline you're flying and see what they offer in flight.
Yeah.
I've flown a lot of American the last few years, and they have started just giving you free stuff to watch, but on your own device, which you're going to have a device with you. I see a lot of people watching stuff on their phones, and you definitely will have a phone with you. So that's not a thing, but you might want to bring a tablet if you have one, because that's what I use. I end up, when I fly cross country on American, I basically end up watching 2 documentaries, and that's kind of how I fill the time on my iPad, which is pretty nice.
The thing I'll say is if you don't take a tablet, take something with a stand. because holding your phone for 4 hours while you're watching a movie or whatever sucks.
Yeah, so I can't speak for every airline, but American now on every plane I've been on for the last 3 years has got a fold down stand on the back of the headrest in front of you.
Oh, that's nice.
That'll hold a tablet or a phone.
See, when we flew Alaska cross country last time, and they did not have that, so I ended up using my iPad with the keyboard and just propped it up.
Yeah.
That's Steam Deck is good. Remember, your seats have power on most newer airplanes now.
Yeah, I wonder how many airplanes are even in service that don't have power at the seat at this point.
Well, it depends on whether you fly Southwest or not.
Yeah.
Sure. But often it's low. You think it would be in the seat back in front of you or something, but usually it's between like you and the person next to you in the middle. And the thing you should know is that on every plane I've ever been on, unless you're in first class or business class, those power outlets turn on and off over so you'll have them on for like a third of the time, and then they turn on different seats at different times. So if your power keeps flickering on and off, it's nothing you're doing wrong. It's just the way the plane works.
Yeah. Defectus. This is an interesting topic. I just saw that Switzerland made a decision that it's now mandatory for all software used in the public sector to be open source. How do you think this would be implemented, and is it a good idea? He provided a link here. It's the federal law on the use of electronic means for the fulfillment of governmental tasks.
And then the abbreviation is MBAG, which I assume is the French or German acronym for German. That same phrase.
Yeah, it would be German in Switzerland.
It can be both, right?
I don't think.
No, I don't know what the official is.
German is the language of Switzerland.
So this wasn't what I expected it to be. We've talked about this in the past when we were doing the FOSPod. We talked to some folks about a potential episode that fell through about the desire of non-US countries to not build their software infrastructure on US owned software, right? So
was it US owned, or was it just closed?
Both. But it was primarily that they didn't want to build stuff on Microsoft and Google software because they're US companies.
Right.
So the impetus was to build an open source framework for like governmental entities that existed outside of the Google and Microsoft frameworks mostly. This is kind of that, but this law specifically is about anything that is developed by or for specifically the public bodies should be open source unless there's specific reasons not to, like rights issues or security concerns. That you have to disclose, not only did the public bodies have to disclose the source code that they pay to have created, but also they have to offer services related to support integration and security for that code, which is really interesting at cost, basically cost covering remuneration. And so like there's a whole bunch of stuff about not maintaining competitive balance with traditional software providers and all that. It's really cool. I think this is a good idea and I like it.
Yeah.
Shout outs to the Swiss.
Yes. I don't really have a good read on how our government approaches stuff like this. I mean, it seems like certainly some of the 3-letter agencies are very invested in open source. Like, I don't know why this is my go-to example. Like SE Linux came out of the government, is my understanding. I believe it was developed by the NSA, I think is which agency.
That seems like a good reason to use it.
Hang on. Yes, it was the NSA that developed SE Linux. Or looks like Red Hat also. Maybe they work together on that. But anyway, like obviously like certain parts of the American security state care quite a bit about open source, but then you also see like I think the government has like massive Microsoft contracts at the same time across other domains.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. And also they spend a lot of money on closed cloud implementations of stuff. Like there's private versions of AWS and Azure that the US government taps into. So like I think the OSS implementation was about not necessarily relying on US cloud companies to run your business, right? And thus hosting your private governmental stuff in cloud servers in the US, right? That I understand why you would be concerned about that.
Yeah.
The other part of it is the open source, and like I think especially in Latin America, people were interested in building open source alternatives to this. so that because the rising tide lifts all the ships is the idea.
Yep. There's another question from Fortune. Recently, I installed an internal card reader in a friend's PC tower. I was surprised to see that these peripherals have moved with the times, and some have features like USB-C ports, but almost every unit on the market is made in the old 3.5-inch floppy drive form factor. Since new cases have not had a floppy drive bay for a very long time, is this just a ploy to force customers to also have to buy a 5.25-inch optical bay adapter for the card reader? Or is there a genuine reason a modern peripheral is made in this obsolete form factor?
I went and looked. I was really surprised because I did not expect to see. I expected there would be. First off, having 5.25-inch bays is increasingly getting unusual on modern case designs.
Yes, like I had to kind of stretch to find a case with that last year.
I've been using external USB card readers since the early tested days now.
Mm-hmm.
Since USB 3, basically. I don't know. I don't know why they would have these be 3.5-inch floppy drives. It's a weird shape.
Yeah, my best guess is that it's just lowest common denominator. You can guarantee that it'll fit in a case with only one of those bays if such a thing exists, or you can always get an adapter up to 5.25 if necessary. Like it's the easiest way to service the whole market of people who would want to put these in their tower. I
think there was a period of time in the early 2000s when there were so many 3.5/5.25-inch devices that like I can't remember if we actually did it or if we just joked about doing it, but we were going to do like a big giant tower with as many of those as we could. And it was like, you could get like audio visualizers that you'd hook in between your sound in and out. So it would like do like fancy car head unit bouncing waves.
I'm sure that's going to do great things for the cleanliness of your audio output.
Look, it's not about the cleanliness always. There were light and fan controllers. There were water pump measure. Like there was a whole ecosystem around water cooling stuff that you put in that front bay, including like reservoirs and stuff like that. So you could pull them out a little bit and fill them and stuff like that. And then there were
audio IO panels as well.
Oh yeah. Fan controllers, card readers, USB. Like there was a company that made USB hubs that went in the 5.25-inch bay that you'd connect to one of the internal headers. So you'd have like 6 USB ports on the front of your computer.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. It's a weird time, man.
Yeah. Computers were weird in that time. Some might argue they still are.
Computers still are weird. Yeah.
Yeah. Question from Squidworth. Corporate email. When's the last time such a ubiquitous end user technology was replaced so quickly? The transition from email to Slack or similar services has seemingly happened overnight, or I've just been slow to notice. At my job today, someone tried to start a conversation about the product we work on via email. So A, I was surprised I even noticed it, and B, I couldn't remember the last time anybody did that. Seemingly the only things we use email for now are meeting invites, automated messages, random statuses, and big internal announcements. And of course, tons of external spam and phishing attempts. Around 10 years ago, I remember describing my job to a very young relative as going to meetings and writing emails. Sadly, the meetings haven't gone away too. Email is probably still the primary tool, or at least common denominator for external communication, but it has completely disappeared as a useful way to communicate with people inside a corporation.
Yeah, it's funny because that happened. Like I've been working remotely for almost 10 years now and not in a big giant company. And when I left Tested, which had a big publisher attached to it, not a huge, but like 300 people, emails was still the primary way we communicated. And we when we started Foo, we used this new thing called Slack. And I don't think I ever sent an email to people who I worked with at Foo the entire time. It was only 5 of us at most, but
yeah, I think that's the key distinction that he makes here, is that it has disappeared as a way to communicate with people inside a company. Like I still use email constantly for intercompany communication, like dealing with publishers and stuff like that for games. But that was always the distinction to me. Like it went to chat inside for your coworkers.
Yeah,
but still, it was still somewhat formal. Like you want more of a record of like a permanent record when you're. Also, I guess the other thing is that a lot of these services people used are naturally siloed within an organization now, right? Like Slack is tied to your organization. Like it was. Now that I'm thinking about it, we used AOL Instant Messenger all the time to talk to people at other companies back in the day, but that was a service that was geared toward just slapping people on a friends list and talking to them.
Yeah, we used AOL even into the early whiskey days, right?
Yeah.
The mid whiskey days.
Oh yeah.
the thing for me, like if there's an ongoing project that an external person works on, we would invite them into our Slack or our Teams, right? So like you had multiple people in different channels, but if I was just like external relations, like talking with Microsoft, we never talked at Stray Bombay. We never did that via Teams chat. That was always an email type thing. And then there's also the kind of third thing, which is like a corporate wiki or a corporate like note taking place where you could keep like, so instead of burying everything in an email thread, you just open up a shared page and you share that document to the relevant people. And then everybody works in that same document. And it turns out it's much easier to parse out the important information than trying to get through a 30 email chain, which, you know, I don't know. I think, and then the last thing about this is the phishing and the spam have become a real problem. Like there's a big conversation going on this in political polling right now because poll results seem to be wildly unreliable because entire cohorts of the population just don't ever pick up their phone if it's from an unknown number or if like you don't text first and it's a known number, right? So, and that's happened because phones have become a massive venue for spam and phishing. So people just don't use it anymore. And the same thing happened with email. So like, I think if email was secure and reliable and not lousy with phishing and spam, we would probably still use email more. But because the chat services are all authenticated and locked, it's safer, and you know that you're not going to get phished in chat probably. Whereas, like, I don't know, when you were at CBS, did you get the IT people sending out, we're going to send you some phishing test emails every once in a while?
I think so on occasion, pretty rarely though, from what I remember. Yeah. We had to do a lot of mandatory training, and I think that's probably where our compliance was centered, was just, hey, you need time to set 2 hours aside to click through these lessons, these illustrated lessons of like, so-and-so has a USB drive full of company secrets. Is that bad?
No, that's fine, right? You just leave those anywhere. Put them on the floor of medieval times. It's cool. All
right. Question from Base Guy GT. Smithflix has been mentioned in passing a few times on the podcast. I'd love to hear more about it. What software and hardware? How many movies?
So Smithflix is 2 machines. There's this Synology NAS with it's a 5-bay, like 22 terabyte, I think, total storage, or 24 terabyte total storage NAS that all the data lives on. And then there's also a small B-Link dual core Celeron, I think 10th or 11th gen B-Link box that I paid like $150 for. Because it does the Intel QuickSync video transcode acceleration, and that is that runs Plex and a couple of game servers and some other kind of heavier stuff than what do you call it? Than the Synology is able to.
Sure.
So I think and like the Synology is running like the Ubiquity Cloud Console and some other like random backend software that I need to run to keep the network going. The actual Smithflix machine, which is that little B-Link, is running Plex and like I said, the game servers and a couple other heavier things.
Now you have to answer the $1 million question. How many movies?
Oh God, I have no idea. Let me look.
I could tell you, maybe. I'm on your server. I never use it, but I am technically on it. I don't know how quickly I can get. Plex doesn't really expose like just a tally of like a just a count, does it?
1,200. It's 1,400 DVDs and Blu-ray rips.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah,
that's a lot of movies.
So a lot of that's TV shows, individual TV show episodes. So that's just the number of files.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and it's all. I don't add a whole lot of stuff to it these days.
I will say, I like I said, I hardly ever use it, but I did use it once or twice after you switched to the B-Link, noticeably faster. Like the transcoding was dramatically faster once you moved to something with QuickSync on it.
The challenge, the NAS theoretically has QuickSync on it, but I couldn't. There didn't seem to be a good way to get the Docker or the plugin or the Synology plugin version of Plex running with the right kernel hooks to enable the hardware acceleration. And so I ended up putting on this standalone machine, and it turned out it's nice to have the standalone machine because the Synology doesn't have that much RAM. So like having a bunch of Docker containers running feels weird on that, and putting them on the standalone machine helped perf pretty dramatically. So
yeah. You didn't ask, but my Plex machine is a 12600K.
How's that doing for your power?
I don't know. I mean, like, look, I probably would need to get a kilowatt and plug it in and watch for a couple months to really give you an answer to that.
Yeah,
it's probably, you know what? PG&E raises their rates so often that I can't tell. Like any increase in usage is subsumed by the constant upward creep of their rates. So who knows?
Well, I was going to say that at the time I switched over from the Broadwell E to this, it saved me actual money because it bumped me down a tier in usage.
Oh, but
then we got the electric car, which puts us on a different rate plan. And we're not like in the old days, they would be like, okay, here, your house is this big and all the other houses in your neighborhood that are this big use this much electricity and you're using 5 times as much as them. So you pay 5 times as much more, which was some real horse shit and they should be sued for. But anyway,
yeah,
PG&E sucks. That's the TLDR.
They sure do.
They're a terrible company and should be fired into the sun.
Yeah. Yep.
What's the opposite of privatized, Brad?
Socialized.
We should socialize
or nationalized.
Yeah, we should nationalize PG&E.
I guess it would be socialized in that case.
It's not privatized. It's not publicized. That's a different thing.
Oh.
You'd think it would be though, privatized and public.
Although there should be further publicization of PG&E's burning down of the state.
The burning down of the state, and like the fact I'm curious. I looked at our power bill and we pay more for transmission of the power than we do for the generation of the power.
I didn't know they itemized it that way.
Well, because we live in San Mateo County and we do a different provider, we buy exclusively wind and solar, which our rate is better on that, but they charge us so much for the transmission across PG&E lines that I feel like we're getting screwed somehow.
I mean, it's the power company. You're definitely getting screwed.
Yeah.
Actually, there's another Plex question here I'll go ahead and ask real quick from SciMelt. I have a large Plex library of uncompressed MKV files pulled straight from disks. Unfortunately, I'm running out of space and I'm not ready to invest in more storage. But I find whenever I compress, I always end up unhappy with the quality. What are your methods and settings, and are you happy with the quality or simply accept the quality for the file size savings?
I'm looking for streaming quality, not disk quality on Plex.
Yeah.
If it's something I care about the disc on, I probably get out the 4K disc.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm in the exact same boat. I have all of my rips are uncompressed because I don't want to lose the quality, but I know that's kind of foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching everything locally, so I can watch it at full quality. It's not like it's transcoding generally over the network, except in rare cases. But yes, it is like a Blu-ray. Blu-rays use H.264. Like that is not an efficient use of space these days for the quality level.
I mean, I guess now that we can do H.265 and higher, better codecs accelerated, probably the thing to do is to I've seen threads on the Plex subreddit or Handbrake subreddit about how to turn your H.264s into H.265s or AV1s.
Yeah, I'd probably encode AV1 at this point.
Well, it depends on what your endpoints are, because a lot of endpoints don't support AV1 yet.
No, that goes without saying. Like you probably would be transcoding in the short term, but it's more of a future proofing. It's like eventually, and probably not that long from now, that it'll be the case that you can just direct play AV1 to most things in the next 5 years. So I'd rather do that than have to re-encode everything yet again in a few years.
Yeah, but like for example, my server doesn't support AV1 hardware transcode, so if I did that, I would have software transcode on any endpoints that don't support AV1.
Well, it should be able to do hardware encode into whatever because you're probably transcoding to H.264, which you do have hardware support for.
No, I don't have hardware decode of AV1.
Oh yeah, you probably would be eating some CPU. So, the decoding is way more. It makes way more of a difference than you think. Like I did a bunch of tests. Like I talked about it before. I use my NAS as an intermediary when I stream Twitch for a variety of reasons. They're mostly archive related, but I got the quick sync on my NAS working to encode the streams going out, which worked fine. Okay. I'm still using kind of a decent amount of CPU though. And then I started looking into, this is all through FFmpeg. Then I figured out how to get the hardware decode working. So the stream coming in is being decoded in hardware and then re-encoded also in hardware. CPU usage dropped to basically nothing, like almost nothing after I like the decode takes way more CPU than you think.
Yeah, when I was doing, I was trying to do a small form factor for a secondary streaming box, and like I put a capture card in the one PCI Express slot that was in that machine and used integrated graphics, which didn't support hardware encode or decode in OBS at the time. And it was unusable. It was like 80% CPU on a pretty decent machine at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, now that you mention it like that, asking that B-Link to decode AV1 in software might be kind of a lot.
Yeah, no, it's a Celeron, dude.
It's a wee little thing.
Yeah, everything's running out of Docker. So like if I ever want to upgrade it, I can. I just picked the lowest power thing I could find that I thought would do the job because I didn't want to pay for the electricity.
Yeah. I've been fiddling with Docker and Podman quite a bit lately. We don't need to get into it right now, but
I think I'm ready for a Docker episode. I need to know more.
Yeah, I think I'm going to move in that direction rather than using full-on system containers for every service I run.
Seems more portable.
It's definitely more portable. Definitely more like you just need this one configuration file, and even if you lose your entire machine, you just point Docker at that, at that compose file, and everything's back up in 2 seconds.
And the data, yeah.
Declarative configurations.
Yes.
I don't know if you declarative is a hot buzzword in server administration these days.
Container land.
Yes. Static or text files really is what we're talking about.
Love a good text file.
Let's see a couple more real quick ones. Vivreen asks, is it worth going for Wi-Fi 7?
No, probably.
So.
If you live someplace that's really congested, yes. If you live someplace that's reasonably uncongested, by really congested I mean like multi-story apartment buildings where there's multiple floors worth of people. If you live in like New York, in Manhattan or Brooklyn or Queens or someplace that's really dense. If you live in the suburbs, you're probably okay. Even if you live in like a normal apartment complex, you're probably okay with 6 or 6E.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if a couple of things are true, if you're coming from a much older standard, like if you're not already, like if you're on 6 or 6E, probably not worth it. But like, if you're on something much older, and if there's not a huge price difference between like 6E and 7, I'd probably go ahead and go for the 7 for future proofing.
Yeah, I think N is an instant upgrade. Anything past AC is probably okay, assuming you're not having problems right now.
Yeah.
The other thing is the answer to this question changes if you do local file transfers off of over Wi-Fi a lot. Like if you're doing big file, like if you're doing video editing over Wi-Fi, then maybe, I don't know. It seems like you're better off running an Ethernet wire than upgrading your Wi-Fi stuff to 7.
Yeah. I'm just looking around. It's kind of hard to get a sense of prices very quickly, but it looks like Wi-Fi 7 access points are starting to get somewhat reasonable.
Yeah, they're under $250 now, I think.
Yeah, like this Unify. I'm not recommending Unify. It's just the first thing I found, but this Wi-Fi 7 Unify Pro is $189, which is like not completely exorbitant.
That's an access point only, though.
It's just for the access point,
not a router.
Yes, I mean it's not super cheap, but that's getting into their normal price range.
Yeah. Got one more?
All right, last question comes from Console Command. I got my first NAS in January, and it recontextualized how I think about computing locally on the local network. Then a shower thought occurred. I have a dark coax cable network in the walls of my house. Just a little aside here. By dark, I assume they mean not being used for anything.
Probably they don't have cable anymore.
Yeah. I have a dark coax cable network in the walls of my house. They once blasted TV shows from a telco. Maybe they can blast TV shows from my NAS. Okay, this is crazy. This is some Frankenstein shit. A Raspberry Pi, a Channel Plus RF modulator, and some ugly Python script later, I now have a 24-hour Simpsons on Channel 14.
I love this so much.
24-hour Simpsons channel on Channel 14, I should say. This is just the beginning. If you had a private TV channel, what would you do? P.S. The box of old cables and tech was a gold mine for this project. This is an amazing idea. I think the biggest problem for me is just having a TV on the receiving end that could actually tune an RF channel in, or tune in a, like a broadcast channel over RF.
Because your TV doesn't have a coax plug.
Yeah, I don't think I have access to a display that could understand that old style of TV signal. But this is an amazing idea.
Oh, so this is where my ancient TV really pays off.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess those plasmas of that era still did have coax on them.
I have components
I'm sorry. My TV does have coax. I don't think it would be able to.
It would be digital.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
He doesn't say if this is an analog or a digital signal. I don't think my TV would not be able to interpret an analog broadcast signal if that's what he's using here.
You can get a digital channel modulator for $79 shipped.
Yeah. Okay. If that's what he's talking about here, then most any TV with a modern digital tuner could do this.
And that's a cool idea.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's kind of a distinction without a difference in the fact there, in the sense that you could just do this with like Plex or something like that digitally, but something about being able to just flip actual channels in your house is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a super cool idea. I have dark coax in my walls too, but we only have one TV really where there's coax outputs. So, and it has Plex on it, but I love this.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. You want to call it? You got one more.
Well, the question here was, if you had a private TV channel, what would you do?
Oh,
in my case, I think somebody already beat me to it. It's the Old Timey Computer Show Twitch channel.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Which just streams Computer Chronicles and similar programming nonstop forever.
For me, Simpsons, it would be like a 90s animation probably. So it'd be like Simpsons and King of the Hill and maybe Futurama, old Futurama, not new Futurama.
Yep. Let's see. Old Timey Computer Show is currently showing an episode of Game Breaker from 1993.
Oh, I love Game Breaker.
I don't know what Game Breaker. I mean, seems to be about video games, but that's about all I can tell you.
The PC World folk discovered the Computer Chronicles episode that Gordon and I were on in like 2002 the other day.
Great.
Yeah.
Sure, that's always fun.
It was a revelatory experience for them.
I bet.
I think that's a good place to wrap it up. As always, if you have a question, you can email it to techpod@content.down. Or if you're in the Discord, you can go to the Questions Seeking Answers channel, post your question. It'll disappear in a minute. Don't put private stuff in there. I have to say this every few months because people forget. Because if you're in the channel when somebody else posts something private, they can see it. So, use judgment. And as always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a listener supported show. We wouldn't be here without the love and support of our delightful listeners. So thank you all.
Thank you
for listening to the show and spending time with us every week. Of course, if you want to become a supporting listener, you can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, that's patreon.com/techpod, where for $5 a month, you get access to the Discord. You get the monthly patron exclusive episode where I think maybe this month we're going to go. We have a backlog of good questions from the last few months that we didn't get to on the Q&A shows.
Yeah, we might do some of those on there.
We might tackle that. Maybe we could do another live one too, if you want, Brad. I'm still set up for that if you want to get crazy one day. And as always, thanks to all of our patrons, but a very special thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, including Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you.
We will be back next week with another episode of the Tech Pod. Till then, I hope everybody stays cool. See you next week.